So Melvin and I first met. We were both living in Durham, North Carolina at the time, and a mutual friend of ours decided to connect us. He was a friend of mine from college, and he had been working with Melvin at a consulting agency, and he knew that we were both just really passionate about education and software. And so he said, "Hey, I have a friend who I think you would really connect with." Melvin and I used to talk all the time about wanting to start our own companies and do more when it comes to social impact. And so our friend connected us. I think we first met at a bar in Durham called Olivia's. Was probably the first time I remember meeting Melvin. And we just struck it off, became good friends. We actually ended up living in the same house together, along with this friend and two others in Durham, and really got to know each other well there. And then it was while we were living in that house that we decided to start Upswing.
I was originally inspired to get into just education in itself, just because of my own background. Growing up in South Georgia, town called Albany, where a lot of students in my high school ultimately did not graduate or go to college. And when I arrived at the University of Georgia, I saw kind of how the other half lives, if you will, where a lot of people that had made it there saw it more as their fallback school, because there were just so many more opportunities that were open to them. So for me, I wanted to really think about how can places like Albany have the same opportunities to succeed as, say, major cities do. So that was kind of when I first just kind of got into education, really wanted to think a lot about, what I could do through tutoring and mentoring and et cetera. And then when I went to university for law school, I had the opportunity to teach a class at North Carolina Central University, which was the local HBCU. And through that experience, connected in with several students who were asking me all these different types of questions that had nothing to do with the class itself, but were all about just them trying to figure out their lives and where they could, take their degrees. And as I just thought about it more and more, those two ideas started morphing together into a question around how can we create a platform that can connect students, particularly, students who are kind of going at this their first time, first generation students, with people who might not live in the same community as them or in the same city as them, but who, just as badly want to help support these students in the same way that those students just as badly want to be able to get that support. And if we could create a platform that creates that connectivity, then maybe we start to see a little bit of a leveling of that playing field. And so that was really kind of, my original impetus for wanting to jump into, this education technology space and find a way to just create resources and tools and technologies that just don't exist for more rural and smaller communities.
Our first college partner at Upswing was Central Carolina Community College. And funny enough, they actually still work with Upswing today. So in our early years, it was 2015, and we had now been, kind of fully operational for, you could say 2 years, but we had been working with schools for just 1 year. And going into 2015, we had, I think, a total of 5 total partners that we worked with. It was Blaine, it was Central Carolina, and then there were 3 others. We set this really ambitious goal for 2015 to say that we wanted to begin the fall semester with 20 total partners. So we were going from just having 5 partners up to 20. And it was one of those things where, you set the goal, it's like very aspirational. It was meant to like motivate the team, kind of like our, aspirational OKRs before we actually had an OKR framework in place. And it was daunting. We had, aside from myself and Melvin, I think we had um, four and a half other people on the team total. We had one salesperson. We had our CTO, who was Chris at the time. We had a guy named Morgan who oversaw customer success. Then we had a customer success lead named Neha. Then we had a business analyst at the time, Justin, who was helping on the product side. And so anyways, not a ton of people to bring in, 20 partners. And even much so that it was, we got to a point where we had to like have a lot of this kind of really hard sit down to say, are we actually going to hit 20? And we had to really kind of galvanize the team to say, yeah, this is how we're going to do it. At the time we were living in Austin, Texas, and it meant a lot of trips around to different colleges, universities. I remember personally going up to Dallas and doing several trips there, going to San Antonio, several trips there. We'd go to Houston, obviously around Austin. And we ended up that fall actually working with about 25 partners. So even though we were only working with 5 coming into the year, we ended up just, I think really, we got to the point where we said it was really validation that what we have, what we're building is something that schools really want and schools are really excited by. So I think for me, that was probably one of the most like vivid moments, because it was, I think, the first really good indication that, hey, there is some product market fit here with our service. And also it's memorable because it felt like such a daunting goal and we ended up achieving it, which was, I think, really rewarding. One of the lessons that I think we learned really early on, and I think a lot of software companies maybe never fully learned this lesson, but for us, it was the importance of really understanding the day-to-day of our customers. So, Melvin mentioned how Central Carolina was the first partner that we ever worked with, and our champion there was an admin named Talia Friday. And I remember Melvin and I, in the early days, going to their center and meeting with Talia, and she had a notebook on her desk. And it was like one of those, 3-ring binders, and it was probably like, 2 or 3 inches thick. And I remember she was really stressed out. She was like, we're so busy. Like it's the time of the year where we have to do all of our data entry. And we were curious. So we said, what does that mean? What does that look like? And she opened this binder, and the binder was, again, a 2 or 3 inch thick binder of papers of students checking in to their learning center. And she told us, every year, me and, my staff, 3 other folks, we spend a week and a half going through and just typing up all this information, putting it into an Excel spreadsheet. Melvin and I were like, wow, that's a lot of work. Like that's really challenging. That's also really expensive, for people to do that for a week and a half. That's a lot of money that the school's spending on that. What if we could help, automate that through Upswing, through our software? And I remember she looked at us and she was like, that would be, y'all would be my favorite, my favorite partner that we work with. And that's what we did. We ended up building a system that took this, pain point that they had and turned it into something that, saved the school a lot of money, and also just saved her and her colleagues a lot of, sanity, and made their jobs a little bit better. So, I think that's something that we've tried to really incorporate over the years is, we don't want to just build software and say this software is built because we think we know what's best and it's cutting edge. Oftentimes you have to really learn what do partners struggle with, and what are their day-to-day operations, and what are the things that, they do it because it's always been done that way. So to them, it might not even present as a pain point, but when you solve it, to them, it's this magical moment. And I think that was one of the things that we learned really early on.
It doesn't really matter what the product is, or what the let's call it the category label is of the product that you're offering or the company that you're offering. What really matters is the why behind what you're doing. And when we first started Upswing, there was this video that I used to play all the time, that would, get on people's nerves. And it was Simon's next video start with why. And the reason why it's so important is because in that video, he talks a lot about, that there are, tons of other, he uses Apple as an example and how Apple has been able to be known as a company that can basically do, well, today, anything. I mean, they've done even more than what they did when he created the video. But that there were other computer companies, right? There was IBM, there were HP, others. And if they tried to create some of the same tools that Apple did, we would kind of have a brain disconnect, right? Like, why is HP creating something like this? But it's because we bought into their why. In the early days, you really have this complex where you are so concerned about this big company is doing this, that big company is doing that, and why aren't we doing what they're doing? That you can be thrown off shift, right? But if you stay connected to the why, if you stay focused on what is the reason for you for doing what you want to do, the differentiation will come in and of itself. You don't have to actually talk about what the differentiators are. So for us, we did start in the tutoring space along with a lot of other companies, but our focus was on online and non-traditional students. What that meant was that we really started thinking about what is the experience like for that, that mother who is having to take care of her kids right after work and is only going to get to her classwork at 10 or 11 o'clock at night, right? We have to figure out what is the experience going to be like for the father who just got laid off of work and needs to get reskilled if he's going to have any opportunity to provide for his family. These are the types of questions that really make us differentiate what we do. It's the reason why we created Anna, for example, to have a way to better connect with students who aren't going to be able to get that support on campus. It's the reason why we've created a holistic student support platform that not only includes academic services like tutoring, but also includes mental health and wellness resources, right? That is also offering asynchronous as well as synchronous support, because you might not always be able to be in one place at one given time. So how can we best support those students? When you always stay true to the why, the differentiators will come in of themselves, because you are so focused on that you're gonna eventually begin to create that level of differentiation with whomever everyone thought you were competing with in the earliest days. And so today, when I look around at the space, I don't really see anyone who really kind of competes with what we do as an organization, because we've just been so intertwined with the students that we care about the most.
Something I've learned about the higher education industry is that typically when people talk about education or higher education in general, there's this certain stigma that they're opposed to innovation, right? You'll often hear people say, education is 5 or 10 years behind mainstream when it comes to innovation. And I think the biggest thing that I've learned is that a lot of these institutions are innovating and they want to innovate, but there are so many considerations that they have to be mindful of, that you have to go about it in the right way, because any change to a system that they use, or a software that they provide, or a process internally, there's so many different people that have to be involved in that process for it to work effectively. And I think for us, over time, what we've really done is by working directly with these institutions, we've been able to help them innovate, but then also have them help us know in what areas can our innovation actually be impactful, where it's something where they can implement it, where they can use it. So when we were first actually looking at building out Anna, it first started with a small pilot with a couple of instructors. And we said, hey, we have this hypothesis that instructors want to be able to better communicate with students, right? And we were trying to solve this problem of a lot of students come to class and they're too shy to raise their hand, or they think they're going to be made fun of because they raise their hand. And so instructors, there was this kind of like issue with the feedback loop where, the most eager, the most confident students would ask questions and get FaceTime in class, and those that were shy and reserved wouldn't. And so those instructors never heard from those students. So we built out this tool. The first prototype of Anna was really focused on that. What we learned really quickly that first semester was that the things that students in the institution really liked was how Anna could send students reminders and allow them to engage with the Anna service. So it wasn't just a blast reminder out to the student, but it was done in a way where the student felt engaged. They felt this additional sense of belonging within their institution. And so we started talking to the colleges that were piloting this, and they all came to us and they said, hey, if we had this at the college level, this would be a game changer, right? There's nothing out there where students can interact and ask questions and get real-time feedback. And it was only through really working with the institutions and listening to them where, we were able to innovate, but we were also able to innovate because of them and help them, help them deliver a new type of solution to students that was not just innovated for, higher ed, it was innovated for, the software industry. Now chatbots and these virtual assistants are a lot more ubiquitous, but back then it was really a new thing. And by working with them, we were able to get that implemented. So I think for Upswing, diversity and more equitable learning environments, it's not just something that we do because it makes us feel good as a company, right? A lot of other companies out there, it's like they have their main mission of we want to sell shoes, or we want to sell, we want to sell something, but we also want to feel good about ourselves. So we'll do these other things, like we'll start a foundation or a nonprofit as a side, or we'll donate some socks to people in need, and that's great. But I think the difference for us is that our business is built around delivering solutions that increase equity and that promote diversity. And that ends up being core of what we do, right? We couldn't operate without those efforts. There's a couple of things recently that I think really came to mind to me as I thought about this question. So one example of that is we work with a college in Iowa called Northeast Iowa Community College. And compared to a lot of the other larger institutions out there, it's a fairly rural college. And through Anna, we're texting students back and forth, and typically, students in most areas are using one of the big cell phone providers, right? Verizon or T-Mobile or others. In Iowa, for some reason, the predominant cell phone provider there is US Cellular. Service provider is US Cellular. They can only accept much smaller text messages out to their students. And I think most companies would have used this as a reason to say, we can't really do business, or we can't really provide this product to y'all. For us, it was, we need to figure out a way to make this product work for these students in this rural area, because that's what we do. That's the core of who we are at Upswing. So our team went out there, and our Anna team said, hey, we need to come up with a solution that these students in this rural area can still get access to reminders and encouragement and engagement through Anna. So they built an entirely different type of Anna message plan for this school that is much smaller in terms of the number of characters that are sent out, but still provides that same level of impact. And I think that's something where it's built into our culture, it's built into who we are. And so I think that's really how we promote diversity and equity. It's not just we like doing it, so we have this little side thing that really helps to build that up, but it's really everything that we do is around how can we provide solutions that help to really help students.
When we first started Upswing, I mean, you never really have an idea of where things are going to go. It's brand new. As I mentioned, we didn't even have a platform, right? When we went to our first college. So you have no idea where things are going to go. You're hoping that you last beyond the first year. And so what did success look like for Melvin and Alex in 2013? Well, certainly lasting to 2014 is kind of the first thing. I would say beyond that is probably getting to a point where maybe various community colleges throughout North Carolina is thinking that Upswing is a good, viable solution for providing, academic tutoring support for their students. Our vision has certainly grown exponentially since then. We didn't know this at the time, but we got accepted into a startup accelerator that brought us to Texas, where we then spent the next 7 years. And that was fortuitous because it gave us an opportunity to look at 2 different markets side by side and think about how we can continue to grow our platform in a way that could support both markets, which ultimately allowed us to be able to be a company that could support the entire country. And today we have colleges all across the country that use us. I think that how our vision has evolved as a result is that we want to go beyond just providing, academic tutoring and support to really being able to be the holistic provider of student services for students. We want it to be the place where they can text their virtual assistant, Anna, and be able to get, either access directly or indirectly from Upswing, all of the different resources that might keep them from dropping out of school. And if we can do that well, if we can do that successfully, then we'll continue to see those retention rates increase. We'll continue to see more students not just make it through their first year, but make it through graduation, get that credential, be able to get a better paying job, support their family, and really begin to do many of the things that we could only dream of doing in that first year. Today we're at over 50,000 students retained, which is just really, really crazy to think about over the course of the last 10 years. But it's also really exciting to see where we could go from here, how many more students we can support from that. And so that's really where we see our vision evolving to.
So in terms of the future of Upswing, I think one of the things that we really look at are around what are some of the trends that we're seeing and that we have seen in the past several years. And one of the things that is becoming just more and more apparent to us is how colleges and universities are wanting to take more of their types of student services and bring those online. And they're doing so in a way where there's currently no solutions that exist to help support those types of innovations. So one such example was, we've been working with Austin Community College, and they're amazing innovators in the space, and they came to us and they said, hey, we have this type of tutoring called embedded tutoring, where each classroom has a tutor assigned to it, and we want to be able to allow our students to meet with that embedded tutor through Upswing. And we were like, wow, this is so interesting. I think it had been happening kind of across the board with more and more colleges, but it was the first time where anyone ever came to us and they said, hey, we want to productize this, we want to bring this online. And so we built that with them. We built out a system where they could begin providing that type of support to their students. And I think what what we've seen over the course of time with Upswing is that a lot of the value that we add to colleges is that from the students, they have a single place where they can go to for help. They don't have to learn 7 different software systems for advising and then tutoring and then counseling and consulting and coaching and all these different things. It's one place where they know where to go to if they need to connect with someone. And so I think what we'll see in the future with Upswing is that we're going to get much better at creating new types of connections for schools through the Upswing platform. You can kind of think of it almost as like, the old like LMS system was really kind of monolithic, and if you wanted to add a new class or modify anything, it was really tough to do so. And then Canvas came around. They really changed the space where it was very modular. It was very kind of self-service. It was easy to create new types of courses and different types of tools within that platform. And I think that's where we see Upswing kind of growing, but within the student services space, where we want to make it really easy, where if a partner comes to us and they say, hey, we want to allow students to meet with a career counselor through Upswing. We don't have to spend 6 months going through an entire process to develop that and make it very specific to that. But we can almost have like a builder where through the Upswing platform we can build new types of support directly into it, and then in turn deliver that type of service much more quickly to our partners. So I think that's some of the innovation that we see happening in the near future with the platform itself. And then in terms of just with the overall kind of Upswing ecosystem, it's all about connecting the different pieces together. It's taking the insights that we learned from a student who's meeting with someone on campus through the platform, connecting that with Anna and vice versa. We've already started making some really good headway here, where through Anna this past year, we've rolled out these new early alerts through Anna, where if a student expresses anything like self-harm or dropout risk or course failure, we're able to almost automatically escalate that to someone on campus that can then intervene and meet with that student to help them through whatever they're going through. So we're seeing some really good insights right now already, and it's really good proof points, but I expect those to only expand in the future, where Anna becomes almost this like this like intervention communication tool where admins are able to get these types of insights much more quickly and through the more connected platform.
There's definitely some things that I would say, larger companies, more established companies, and organizations, how they tend to behave that are different from, let's say, scrappier companies or those that are, still kind of, still in the mud a little bit. I think one, you are ferociously focused, right? This year we've made a lot of, or sorry, not this year, but over the last 12 months, we've made a lot of adjustments because we knew that we had to, but it wasn't the first time we've had to make adjustments. The year before that, we made a lot of adjustments, right? Through the COVID years. And those adjustments have helped us to fulfill the mission that we have at an even higher level than before. But it hasn't come without pain, right? It hasn't come without us having to do things that we didn't want to do, or without us having to learn things that we didn't want to have to learn the hard way. But all those things are what kind of have gotten us to where we are today, to become who we are today. I think that what I would tell my future self is to not lose sight of that and to not forget about that. Because I think that as you get larger, as you become, more well known as an organization, et cetera. I think companies can tend to become pretty complacent. Things come to them more easily, and so why would they need to change and adjust as much? Alex and I actually saw this a pretty good bit when we first entered the market. There were some very complacent, stodgier, older companies who were just so behind on the technology, and implementing some of the newest tools that were out there would not have been hard at all. But why would they, right? They had already gotten really large, they had already gotten really bloated and complacent, and so I think that can be your downfall. I would want to tell myself to not forget that, to stay scrappy, stay resilient, stay in the mud, I guess.
I think for me, it's maybe a similar, my message to my future self is maybe coming from a similar place as Melvin, but I'll kind of explain where it's coming from. So when we first started Upswing, we went through this this accelerator in Durham, and this was back when it was just Melvin and I, and Upswing was just an idea. And the guy that led this, actually it was an incubator, this incubator called Groundwork Labs in Durham, and the guy that led it would always yell at all their companies to get out of the office, and a lot of them wouldn't. A lot of them would just sit on the computers and they'd be like, coding all day, or working on the perfect pitch deck, or working on some marketing collateral. And the intention was not to say like, just get out of the office for the sake of it, but go talk to your customers, go see what are their pain points, go talk to them, hear from them. And we would do that. Melvin and I would go and we'd visit different colleges and different universities, and we'd go all around North Carolina doing this. And I think the bigger that the company gets, the easier it is to forget that you get so much value out of going and talking with customers, going and talking with the users of your product, and you learn so much from doing that. And I think a lot of that complacency Melvin mentioned comes from the fact that like larger companies tend to think like, oh, we know all about our customers, we know them in and out. And I think the thing is like that changes over time, right? Customers change over time, people change over time, society changes over time. And so I think the message I would give to my future self is like, go get out of the office, because the bigger we get, the more like established we get. I think the easier it is to assume that we know our customers really well. Whereas maybe we did know our customers really well, but if we're not out there learning about them, talking to them, having these conversations, all the time, we're no longer gonna know who they are and what what inspires them, what motivates them, what really can help them.